Hey, welcome to the channel, or welcome back to the channel. I'm Nick, and I make videos about things that I like, be that gaming or design. You can find a little bit of everything here. Today's video will focus on the design side, so feel free to subscribe, ring the bell, and all of that. But now, let's get into the video. Today, we're going to be taking a look at a segment of the product design world that I think doesn't get quite enough design love, and that is mice. Now, to be clear, there's absolutely no shortage of functional and ergonomic mouse designs. In fact, mouse design may be one of the most mature design categories in the PC tech world. It feels like every company and their mom have made a mouse at this point, but most manufacturers have kind of settled on what seems to be accepted as a good standard for what most people want in their mouse. A simple Google search for computer mouse will show you exactly what I'm talking about. Specific ergonomic designs aside, the standard has more or less settled on this more sloped teardrop shape, and that makes a lot of sense. If you just kind of let your hand sit loosely on a flat surface, it naturally makes approximately this shape. And that more organic shape allows the hand to kind of rest instead of having to constantly grip your mouse like the original more rectilinear designs did. Take the butt of the mouse, if you will. With how much surface area there is, you don't really need to squeeze the mouse to keep hold of it. It allows you to loosely grip it with just these two fingers in their natural resting position to keep it from pivoting or sliding away from you. So that alone is going to get rid of a lot of the problems that may occur from using a mouse for a long period of time. It's a very logical and practical design, and for mice that need to be functional, it makes a lot of sense not to spend too much time reinventing the wheel. However, it's not exactly what I would call interesting or exciting. While I can fully understand and appreciate the value of having a standardized design, I do find it just a bit boring. It leads, as standardized anything is supposed to everything feeling essentially the same. And for someone like myself, who likes all my products that I buy to feel unique in some way to me, that isn't exactly the most enticing. But there are a few companies out there who are still making interesting design choices with their mice. One of the biggest, I think, is Logitech, and aside from their industry darling MX Master 3, a great example from them is their Pop mouse. It has this wonderfully symmetric and organic shape to it. They don't give up the benefits of the aforementioned standard design, but they make their products stand out with really great CMF choices. The body of the mouse is made of a recycled composite plastic, the exact makeup of which I was entirely unable to find, but regardless of what it actually is, it feels absolutely great in the hand. It's lightweight, and the finish they chose makes it kind of feel like you're touching really soft skin, but not in a creepy way. They also make really effective use of bold and obvious parting lines that helps hide any imperfections in the seams, as well as giving a really amazing visual separation between forms. And the blocking of the colors gives it a really unique and pleasing feeling of formal balance. With the exception of the Nightfall colorway, they all use the visually heavier color on the bottom, giving it a really great visual weight and grounding. Overall, they clearly have a really astute understanding of the Gestalt principles of design, and utilize that philosophy really effectively. For those of you unfamiliar with the term, the short explanation is that it refers to the way that different shapes and design elements interact with each other to create one whole form instead of a bunch of disparate elements. Overall, this is an absolutely stunning mouse, which frankly, aside from their use of plastic, looks like it could have come right out of the Bauhaus itself. However, from a gaming and overall specs standpoint, it definitely leaves a bit to be desired. To be clear, I think for general computing, which is absolutely their target audience, it's an amazing value. $40 for a mouse that looks this great gives you the option of connecting up to 3 computers while switching on the fly with an actual hardware button, not to mention the fact that they give you the ability to copy and paste across these computers, and give you a macro button, which is set to emoji by default, but can also just be set to do whatever button input, is an absolutely stellar deal to me for their target audience. Now, I personally wouldn't choose this mouse for myself. This one belongs to my girlfriend, and she really loves it. But I can't use it just because, for one, the Hypersoft look isn't exactly my vibe, and while I do think it looks objectively beautiful, I don't think it fits too well with my setup and overall aesthetic. And then there's the fact that the sensor has a polling rate of 125 Hz, and that's not exactly great for gaming. This is because a low polling rate will give you more lag in your games. Polling rate simply refers to how often your mouse reports its position back to your computer. The higher the polling rate, the faster your computer knows where your mouse is located, and so your mouse feels more responsive to your movements. For things like web browsing, word editing, or other non-high-precision computer work, a low polling rate isn't really an issue. 125 Hz is a delay of a mere 8 milliseconds, and that's negligible for normal computer use. But when you get into competitive games, it does become a lot more of a problem. So that's why I personally prefer not to use this mouse on the daily. Though I do really appreciate and love the design decisions that they've made, and I think other companies have a lot to gain from that kind of approach. And a great example of that is Lofree. Now, they aren't nearly as big a name as Logitech, so chances are, unless you're into relentlessly researching entry-level keyboards, you probably haven't heard of them before. Lofree is a relatively new company with the stated goal of wanting to create interesting and unique designs meant to improve your satisfaction with the space around you and give it a bit more of a retro vibe. Their founder, Tim Chu, has worked for a number of large tech companies focusing on product design. With a stated over 150 products under his belt, I would say he's quite qualified when it comes to actually shipping products. And that qualification absolutely shows with their Touch mouse. This thing is abundantly gorgeous. I think it looks like it came right off the page of a Braun concept design collection or something. The way that the different forms interact and complement each other is extremely compelling to me. You can tell the team behind this absolutely had an appreciation for simple, but not bland design. I think one of the things that I love about the formal elements here is the unparalleled acceptance of parting lines. They are everywhere, and it gives the visual feeling of being modular and something that you could upgrade or change yourself. It has a brilliant industrial look to it, which is pretty difficult to achieve. This mouse, while it absolutely follows the general form that we talked about earlier, does not compromise on personality. If you brought this to your workplace, I guarantee it would turn more than a few product-minded heads. It doesn't really look like anything else on the market, and that's quite a feat in my eyes. On top of the exceptional formal elements, the main draw for this mouse is its use of mechanical switches and keycaps. Now, that's a tiny bit misleading because neither the switches nor the keycaps are interchangeable for standard keyboard parts, but they definitely deliver on the experience. The whole thing is made of a really great PBT material, which is the same plastic that most nice keycap sets use, and that gives it a really great feeling in the hand. It's not that same slightly glossy satin finish that most mice have. It's a really great, not quite soft touch, but matte finish, which honestly makes it look and feel a bit like a clay render instead of an actual product. And to be clear, that's definitely not a bad thing. I personally think more things should be made to look like that. I mean, come on, is there anything more satisfying than a good clay render? Regardless, everything about this feels intentional. It genuinely doesn't feel like they cut any corners on this, and while I'm sure they had to make some compromises, as all products do, whatever they aren't obvious. When it arrived new, it was extremely solid, with little if any creaking, and the entire thing just felt extremely solid. Now, it has loosened just a bit in the time that I've been using it as my daily driver, but honestly, that's only if you twist it like this, and that's not a normal way to use your mouse, so I don't really find that to be an issue. Overall though, the quality is frankly outstanding. I ordered this mouse half expecting it to look beautiful, but not really feel that great to use. but I've been absolutely blown away by just how good it feels. Now, it's not all sunshine and rainbows. As much as I love this, it isn't perfect. So now let's get into the reasons you might not want to buy this, and there aren't that many. To start with, we come back to that polling rate. On this mouse, it's significantly better than the Logitech Pop mouse at 500 Hz, which is a respectable 2 milliseconds of lag, but generally you want your mouse to be somewhere in the ballpark of 1000 to 1500 Hz if you want your mouse to be considered in the higher range. And again, if we want to get the most out of our games, we're going to want to aim for that higher range. Though to be clear, most people probably won't be able to tell the difference between 500 Hz and 1000 Hz without doing some kind of head-to-head test. So I do have my gripes with using this as a point against the mouse. I honestly don't know that increasing the polling rate will have any discernible effect for you. In fact, I went all the way to the top end to try and fix the microstutters that I noticed specifically in Sea of Thieves and Palworld that I thought was caused by this mouse, thanks to some online forums. So I bought the Pulsar X2H, which can go up to 8000 Hz, and frankly, I couldn't tell any difference head-to-head between the two. Aside from dragging them across my screen and looking at the space between the cursors, there really was no discernible difference, and I'll try and catch that on camera, but I don't know if I'll be able to. So I really think that's way more dependent on how the game is made rather than your input hardware, and I suspect the issues I was experiencing are more related to the game itself or something else in my PC. So unless you're looking to compete in FPS games on a pretty high level, over 1000 Hz isn't going to make much of a difference, and for most games outside of that genre, 500 is plenty. But I do think there's a lot of personal preference here, so I'll just say that this mouse isn't going to be for you if you do find that you appreciate really high polling rate mice, because it's in the mid to low range in terms of that. The other thing I don't really adore about this is related to the parting lines. And again, I love them. Visually, they add a lot to the mouse, and I wouldn't want it to be made without them. However, I do find that they tend to collect a lot of hand-related grime. This is something I usually can only notice on mice around the side buttons because there's a sharp edge there, which is a magnet for this kind of dirt. But on the touch, you have this really great thumb rest, which, while I love it functionally and aesthetically, the seam where it meets the body does collect a lot of dirt, and it's really obvious because it's facing up instead of down, like where it tends to collect on the side buttons. Plus, the entire thing is a really light color, so that makes it even more obvious. There may be something they could do to mitigate that, but if the only solution were to be adding a monolithic sloped curve to this section, I would much prefer to just wipe the dirt off every once in a while. It's really not that big a deal, and it comes off really easily, so it's really more of a nitpick than anything serious. Ultimately though, I think this is just a really beautiful mouse. I personally really love the more aggressive rear hump, and I appreciate the dedication to the more mechanical keyboard mindset of letting you disassemble it into multiple pieces. As someone who really loves having the option to customize my stuff, tightly integrated hardware is honestly kind of the bane of my existence. And while I think it would be really cool if a V2 had totally standard Cherry-style switch and keycap support, I can understand if there's some manufacturing challenges to doing that. It may just not be possible for them, I don't know. But if you're looking for a beautiful mouse to complete your setup, and you aren't a snob for polling rate, at just $70, the Lofree Touch should absolutely be high on your list. But that's it for this video. I hope you found it entertaining and maybe you learned something along the way. Regardless, I would love to hear from you down in the comments what you think of the mice that we explored today. And maybe let me know which your favorite is that you would recommend. Other than that though, thank you so much for watching. I hope to see you here next week, and as always, have a great day.